Hey guys, it's Trevor Hold here. I'm here with Nikki Archer from Kumbawari country. Hey Nikki, thanks for joining us.
G'day Trevor, how are you today?
Yeah, good, thanks. So we're just here today just to have a good conversation about fire ants. I know that you're down on the Gold Coast area at the moment, and fire ants are a big issue in your part of the woods.
They certainly are, and the issue has definitely caused a lot of contention in southeast Queensland, but particularly on the Gold Coast because we're so close to the border. The state government were trying to stop it getting over the border, but unfortunately the resources just weren't there in the early days to really nip it in the bud. So as we both know, they've crept over the border and being seen in other parts of Australia now.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, I suppose. Just so our audience understands, is they were discovered in 2001 on the Port of Brisbane, and estimates at the time put them there between 10 and 20 years prior to that, based on assays and the amount of acreage. I think at the start it was about 40,000 hectares they were established when they first discovered it. So it had been there for some time prior to their discovery in 2001. So, and it's now 2025. So since they discovered them, it's been 24 years, and some estimates say, between 30 and 40 years or something like that. They've been in southeast Queensland, and like you say, at the moment, I suppose there's some. They call them outliers. I think they're outliers outside of the area. So we've got a couple of suppression zones nominated and an eradication band around it nominated, and if they exceed out of them areas, they call them outliers, areas where they do treatment around known nests that they discover outside them areas. So as you say, down there on the Gold Coast, it probably is quite hectic, like you say, because of that border issue. I suppose no one wants to get them over the border. I have had correspondence recently, recent correspondence from the New South Wales Agriculture Minister stating that they haven't got any known infestations in New South Wales at this exact time, but these things change, I suppose, weekly.
Could I ask you, do you have a rough, off the top of your head, memory of when that correspondence was received? Was it recent or how long ago?
Recent. Yeah. So I've literally got within the last 2 weeks. Yeah, within the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
I've got, so theoretically they're having good wins. Yeah, in New South Wales and keeping on top of it, which is probably what you need to do, I suppose, if you want to stop the fire ants. So you've been living on the Gold Coast area throughout that whole period. Have you been there that whole time? Or?
I'd say I've been Gold Coast and for around 20 years, and prior to that, northern New South Wales for about 10 years. So the border region for quite some time. Yeah.
And have you been affected by fire ants at all in that time? Have you had any exposure? Have you seen any fire ants, or what's your experience?
Sure have. So you know that the film industry is really taking off on the Gold Coast. I was fortunate enough to be sort of like a site coordinator, site manager for one of the particular site sets, and that was in a rural property in northern Gold Coast, and there were a lot of vegetation brought in on site, for props and that kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying it's that vegetation that caused the fire ant sightings that then came about, but myself and the other person I worked with, who also managed the site, spotted some nests and reported them, first of all, to the work site, And of course, then that was passed on to the property owner, and the reports were then made to the relevant departments, and we set upon trying to eradicate the nests that would just pop up here and there on the site, just trying to stop it from that creep going down. And that was using the bait that, of course, the department provided. And being a work site, of course, all safety precautions had to be taken. It was just a case too of let's eradicate this site while we can, but also we can't have workers and actors and production crew being injured by these bites. So yeah, we took every precaution to eradicate them over a series of months.
Yeah. And you say that they just use the same corn grit type baits that they're using in the eradication. So there was no direct nest treatment on it, but just the broadcast baits. Is that what you're saying?
No, we targeted the nests with the bait. There was always concern because it's not a perfect thing. The thing is that damn queen, you know, someone's got to carry the stuff down to her and inhibit her growth and puberty, shall we say. So, yeah, we just did our best with what management tools were available at that time.
Yeah. And did you have anyone was anyone bitten from them fire ants, or like how long ago was that? Was that in the early days, or was that just recently? Or?
This was about 2 years ago when they first made an appearance on the Gold Coast at all. They came from the north and headed south. No injuries taken, and I guess that's too because we'd blocked the nests off as a no-go zone, treated the nests, and we were fortunate not to have any injuries.
Yeah. So you're saying prior to about 2 years ago, there was none down on the Gold Coast? Is that in the area?
I wouldn't know that. And I think that's because the public education program only really took off at that point as well. Once it was becoming apparent there was a spread going on. And I do remember at the time there being some frustrations from residents, from people worrying about the spread as well, that just not enough was being done at that time.
Yeah. And I think that correlates pretty strongly with the 2023 to 2027 current eradication strategy that they got to now. So I feel that they had a strategic review in 2001, and I feel that from that they started this 2003-2007 current approach. And like you say, that's probably resulted from massive spread from lack of control in the heavily infested areas where they come from, Logan and the port of Brisbane where they were. So and it is disappointing, I suppose, that these things happen, because there's supposed to be implementation of processes to stop invasive pests from coming, and I feel that when you talk to Jim Wilmot, he used to be there when they were discovered in 2001. He was one of the senior biosecurity dudes there, policymakers working under Henry Palaszczuk, and he was saying if you invest the most money in preventing something from happening in the first place, that's the best key, because obviously once it's here, it's hard. And there were discussions at the start that even when they first discovered them, due to the survey of them, fire ants are a super pest. There's no doubt about it. And they have multiple ways of establishing successful colonies. And a lot of people are even saying that when they were first discovered, there was already a major problem that's probably unlikely to be solved in 2001. So
Right. So that's a bit before my time, and a bit of a disclaimer here. I'm not a scientific expert. I don't have a scientific background.
Yeah.
My background is more as an environmentalist and a conservationist. An animal lover.
Yeah. And I suppose that's what brings us. I suppose the reason why I suppose that we started this conversation is there was some post on Facebook that you did in regards to that, wasn't it? About talking about the insect growth regulators and clearing up the fact that they're the process and what it does to the queens, and makes them infertile and all that sort of stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what and like I said, I think we spoke yesterday, and you've had a lot of response on that post. I have got it here. Let's just see if I can. I don't know how clever I am at sharing stuff, but
Very good. Good.
I'll just get down these messages here.
I had a message this morning. Just be careful about scrolling past the one that's in all.
No. We'll just keep it up here. So obviously, we're not gonna, no one's saying to eat anything or anything. This is just a bit of
I was being
So that's just a bit of fuss there. But we're talking about, starting at this section here, the 2 insect growth regulator. This is hormone that the crews use, S-methoprene and pyriproxyfen. They're the 2 products. And I think you go on to say that, or whether you do it or you don't, but there are genetically modified corn grit and soya oil that's used. And the reason why they're genetically modified is to allow the starch to remove from the corn, which allows more absorption of the soya oil to the grit. And the soya oil is used as used to hold the active ingredient, suspend the active ingredient in it, and it's supposed to stick to that corn grit. So that's the product that you're talking about. So this is different, I suppose, to the direct nest treatment that they have, where they will inject fipronil or indoxacarb or whatever into the nest for direct, which you have to be a licensed pest controller to do that. So these are the baits that they go around with their little seed machines or whatever and distribute them along the eradication zone. So that's what we're talking about. So and you go on here, and this is all pretty factual in the fact that to eat these products, if you don't have a adverse effect to them, that they are saying that they're quite safe and effective. The thing is, I suppose, with a lot of these things, and we'll just move past this one, and we'll just go to the next one. Sorry, I'm just trying to work out how to use all this stuff.
You're very with the tech skills.
When we're looking at this is the Australian and Veterinary Chemical Code Act 1994, and this is what the APVMA. So the person who regulates these chemicals and these products is the Australian Veterinary and Pesticide Medicines Association, APVMA, and they're regulated by rules, I suppose. So these permits, you can't just use them off-label like they are using them. They need specific permits because they are classified, as a chemical that needs regulating. They're not like mundane, like water. You don't need to have, a permit to use it, but these chemicals you do. And it's interesting, I suppose, these products. But in the Pesticides Act, it talks about here. I don't know if you know, but the terminology is a bit strange, I suppose. They call it a qualification. So everything's safe, I suppose, if used responsibly and respectfully and that. But to say something's safe and effective without a qualification is actually breaching of the of this Agriculture and Veterinary Chemicals Act 1994, and it's only they talk about it being a civil offence, and I think it worked out about $8,000. But basically, for example, Roundup, for example, is safe and effective, but you can't drink Roundup. I mean, you'll die. I mean, so you got to say, if you use Roundup as per the label, responsibly in a direct, thing, and this and that, then it can be considered safe under whatever circumstances or whatever. It's probably not a very good example, because Roundup's probably be found to be quite dangerous. But that's what this talks about, and it just says you can't expressively or implicitly claim that the use of a chemical or product is recommended. Make a claim, however the claim is stated, without it. So this is it here, this E. So a person must not or cause or permit to be done any of the following. So expressively or implicitly make a claim, however the claim is stated, without any qualification, or with a qualification that, in the APA VMA's opinion, is unjustified, to the effect that the chemical product is natural, organic, safe, harmless, non-toxic, non-poisonous, non-injurious, or non-environmentally friendly. So I guess that's just trying to point out that these chemicals, if used respectfully and responsibly, aren't going to cause any harm. But if used irresponsibly and recklessly, then it is possible that they can cause harm. I suppose that was just one of the small things, I suppose, that I wanted just to point out, I suppose, because we don't want these and I know it was a little bit of fun at the top of your post and that, and it's just Facebook, I suppose, but we just want to reiterate that these chemicals are regulated, they are toxic, and
Yes.
they do require respect when using them. So
Exactly.
yeah,
And that's, I was being facetious in the case of, you wouldn't feed a 10-kilo animal 10 kilos of the bait just to test a theory. You have to use these chemicals responsibly, and you do have to refer to the MSDSs. And I do want to reiterate or just point out that when I was involved in the eradication, that we did actually have the fire ant team come in, and they did the more hardcore work. So we did more of the, they'd squirt the nest, whereas we'd squirt the baits out kind of thing. And you're right, Facebook is Facebook. Just sort of pointing out, you're right, water doesn't have an MSDS. Just to point out that everything has to be used safely and wisely, and if it is, then it should be safe and effective.
And that's right. And I don't think anyone has an argument with that. I suppose the other thing with that, and we'll just bring it up again because it's a very good post, a very good conversation starter, and I'd like to thank you for for posting it, because I do believe it's got a lot of value there in it. But we talk about, for example, like you say, the amount of chemicals that you need to consume to cause injury. I think one of the examples is dogs, pyroxafen or whatever. But regardless of this, I suppose the effects of these chemicals are very dependent on the susceptibility of the animal, the environment in which they're kept, I did actually, what I can do, I did do a similar post on this. This was very early in the start of it, and based on it was actually the Invasive Species Council that made a comment that this stuff is safe and effective, but the effects of these chemicals are dependent on the environmental conditions, such as soil type, including manure and urea concentration, soil conditions, including moisture content, land contours, temperatures, air, ground and wind, weather conditions, sun exposure and other site-specific parameters, in addition to animal susceptibility to the chemicals in the distribution zones and the major contributor to the severity of the adverse effects of these chemicals. So they're very situational, the effects of these chemicals, and they can have different impacts depending on different environments, I suppose. But the thing is, there are other ways that these chemicals can impact people without even digesting them. And a lot of people have reported a lot of adverse effects throughout the biosecurity areas. And I suppose it's worthwhile talking about that a little bit more, because I know the National Fire Ant Eradication Program has also made very similar, and maybe, did you get that from their site, them statistics, or it's very similar to what I've read from them previously?
Those reports, I'd say that piece was written a while ago. I'd been sitting on it and I've read it somewhere else in the where I typed it out. So I don't want to misrepresent myself or anyone else by attributing those. Something else, I hate to sort of go left field here, but another point that I was really trying to point out was that these chemicals, the reason that we have the soybean oil and the corn grit is because that's what attracts fire ant species. That's what they eat. It doesn't attract, bees look for nectar. Other ant species aren't very, they might just ignore it. And in saying that, there are some native ant species that will pick up these grains and take them back to the nest. There is some research out there to say that once treatment program has moved on from sites where native ant species numbers have fallen victim and taken them back to their nests, and so their numbers are lowered, that once treatment is taken off the site and there's no longer treatment necessary, those native ant species, their numbers do return and flourish. They're A-OK. It's not just a free-for-all of throwing the stuff, by handfuls over every property they go to. This is a targeted eradication campaign. Some people might argue that it's not 100% effective. I mean, nothing's 100% effective. But I do believe that they're doing the best they can, doing the research that's necessary to ensure native species aren't wiped out along with fire ants. And now we're seeing that government departments and academics are getting some more resources to further research into this and do surveys. So I think there's a bit of there's some assumptions out there that it is a free-for-all, and anything that comes across this bait is going to woof it up and be injured or worse. The bait is the carrier, as you say, for the growth I can't say the word. I can type it. I can't say it.
Insect growth regulator.
That's the one. This isn't just a free-for-all. We've got the best expert advice we can from the United States. The United States, we can talk about that later if you like. Their experts are saying that we have a window of opportunity for eradication, and it's fast closing. And so that's what we're trying to aim for, is just get rid of them while we can. Otherwise, we're going to have to be in a position that the US are and use more toxic or, stronger chemicals to try and control rather than eradicate.
Yeah, and I think you do say that there about how the soya protein oil is what the fire ants are attracted to, which is an interesting point. So I feel that it's not about being right or wrong, is it? It's just about having these conversations. So I've spoken to for example, bee people that manage beehives, and the program, for example, says they don't affect pollinators. It's a blanket statement that they make, that they do not affect pollinators, and the research is out there on that. They say that. But from me talking to people that have lost hives and to professional beekeepers, they're saying that the helicopters are flying over and they're dropping the baits from the helicopters. They're landing in open flowers. These corn grits are landing in open flowers. And it's possible, and I've witnessed it with my own eyes, that the oil separates from the corn grip, which has got the toxic poison. And in them circumstances, it could leach into the nectar of that flower, and the bee can come in and take it back to their hives without picking up the corn grit and taking it back. So there's scenarios there that aren't being talked about, that have been completely ignored. And then people have been attacked saying that they're providing misinformation when they have lost their beehives, for example, and are being ignored. And not only that, they've been ridiculed that they're spreading misinformation, when in fact proof and evidence does exist that these chemicals can affect, under certain circumstances, these beehives, and not only being ridiculed, but being abused and being called a liar when they've lost dozens of hives, their livelihoods. I feel creating the friction that we're seeing in the community by not listening to people. People have no real agenda to say stuff that's not true. Why would people lie about the fact that they're losing their beehives, or why would people lie about their pets being negatively impacted? These things are happening to people in the community, and by not being heard or not being listened or not even being believed, I feel is creating negative impacts. And there are scenarios, like you say, with that research that you did point out. They were an average size of 530 square metre blocks in the city. That research that you pointed out, these guys are aerial spraying hundreds and thousands of hectares of land. You know what I mean? So what happens on a 500-metre town city block, I suppose, is not representative of these bigger areas that they are doing. So there's a lot of concern around that as well. But adverse, yeah.
So I think this really goes down to the core of this discourse that really needs to happen, where we've got anecdotal evidence. And I agree. I agree that both sides of the debate don't actually have an agenda. Everybody just wants to see the end of these things, causing drama. So from my perspective, even though I'm not a scientist, because I'm not a scientist, I need to refer to expert advice to be reassured what the facts are. And I would love to see resources allocated to toxicology reports to this. Is it causation or is it correlation? Are things coincidentally happening? Is this hysteria or is it grounded in fact? We need to take even though people are rightfully upset if they've lost pets and livestock and beehives, that's a really upsetting event. In any adult mature conversation, to get the best outcomes, we've got to take the emotion out of it and get the science into it. So I keep asking, when people say I've picked up 6 doves from my property, and the first thing I ask is, of course, I love animals. I have to put that aside emotionally for now and go, right, if this is a problem, if it's killing wildlife, you get the birds autopsied. Can you please share the toxicology reports? That's what this discourse needs. And how, you know, the government and academics do have the benefit of resources.
Yeah.
The everyday citizen doesn't.
And that's a big problem, isn't it? Because I know I got a necropsy report on one of my cards, and it was $700, and literally said that the calf died from toxic liver poisoning, and complicated words or whatever. But when you look at the mushroom murders recently, it's been in the big news. You know, that lady poisoned her family or whatever, step family or whatever, with the mushrooms, and they were talking about the toxicology reports on that. And Spotlight done a very good article on it on the TV, and I think you can still go to Channel 7 and find it, the mushroom killers or whatever. And they talk about the toxicology reports, and this is in a murder case on human beings where there was no budgetary restraints trying to find a mass murder of 3 people she killed, I think, and injured one or something. But the difficulties of toxicology inside mammals or inside animals is very difficult. You've got a short time frame to work with, but when you watch that Spotlight program, they had the experts talking about it, but you can't rely and you can't rely on the toxicology reports. You need an investigation. So because you can't pinpoint toxicology, like you can test for liver failures, kidney failures, and all the rest of it, but it's not going to say, oh yeah, that fire ant bait killed it. You know what I mean? Like it takes an investigation, and some of these toxicologies, the first thing that they can say, oh well, that could be lantana, that could be fireweed. But if you had an investigation where someone from the DPI come out to your property and checked for fireweed and checked for lantana, didn't find any, they could rule that out with a simple investigation. So relying on toxicology reports and veterinary reports without an investigation is not creating the outcomes that we need. And I do agree with you. I feel that we need to be looking into these things. Like, for example, my dam was full of crayfish, full of fish, full of mussels. And that's what we used to use to establish the healthiness of our waterways. That's the bio-life of your waterways is a sign of its healthiness. And that's without these things living in there, that means that water is dead. It's dead water. There's no living organisms in it. So that's and the chemicals that they're doing, if they do get into the waterways, have long-lasting effects. It says so in their own paperwork. There's no research done on bioaccumulation, biomagnification, all these issues that they haven't got any. They don't know. They don't know what the implications of these things in. And I feel that's some of the problem. There's no research that we can point to or that's available for us to say the fire ants have a biological impact on the environment. The chemicals have a biological impact on the environment. And we've researched it and say, okay, so it justifies doing this approach because the chemicals have less of a biological effect than the fire ants, or we don't know, because a lot of people are saying, well, hang on a minute, we're having these extreme adverse effects with the chemicals, and there's not even any fire ants in the area, so they're not having these negative impacts of the fire ants at all in these areas. So there's a lot of these issues, I suppose, and having the burden on the poor homeowner or the individual to have to pay for these reports, which are just ignored anyway, because without an investigation, the paperwork's not worth a piece of, it's not worth anything, because you spend all that money, you get all that stuff, but unless someone comes out and investigates the situation, what is it good for? You know what I mean? And I suppose that's the frustration that people are feeling.
Yeah, understandably so. I guess from my point of view, that I've arrived to as well is I'm much of the school of it's not that environmental damage is unimportant.
Yeah.
It's the harm and the loss that can be caused by fire ants. And I think that's the way the government have approached it, saying, look, we haven't invested enough. What we are investing is now just so focused on eradication.
Yeah.
Trying to sometimes get money for research and investigations out of government is like, drawing blood from
they got their blinkers on, haven't they? They got their blinkers on. We're going to treat this many. We're going to treat this many properties every month. We're going to put this many chemicals down, regardless of what. And they haven't focused on that research. But
it's the best of a bad situation, really. They're trying their best. I don't appreciate some of the hyperbole out there that there's some sinister, you know, reasons the government's taking over. And in my honest opinion, I think that's a lagged effect from the COVID days where people lost a lot of
it's come from there. Yeah. Especially on the Gold Coast there with that border closure, because I've done a lot of work with the mental health on that, and there's people that were on one side of this phantom line and they couldn't get their support on the other side.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It was a drama. It caused dramas. And again, that was the government trying to make the best out of a really crappy situation, not doing it 100%.
Not doing it very good.
You know, inconsistencies and some pretty sad stuff happening out of it.
Yeah.
But honestly, if you or I were a premier, our minister of a department, the responsibility of looking after millions of lives and billions of hectares, it's a big job, and we're all only human at the end of the day. We are all trying their best, whether you're a property owner with some livestock or whether you're a pen pusher in a government department. I don't think there are hidden agendas that the COVID era brought out. I don't think those hidden agendas have carried over into this
issue. But I think the problem is the fact that this program is run under Parliament. What is it? Not commercial and confidence. It's confidential, hidden behind the Parliament confidence or something like that, where it's not really public. You know what I mean? So a lot of these decisions, like the helicopter tenders, for example, aren't public tenders. So I mean, so having these hid behind, there's no transparency there, I suppose. So that's where a lot of these conspiracies or whatever you want to call them come from, because we don't know. It's not open tenders, and that's not normal for government, to run it that way. So there is a lot of problems like that.
It's becoming normal.
And the other issue is too, and I know you spoke about it briefly, but I've been working with universities and with Professor King in particular from the University of Central Florida. I've had commercial contracts with them now for over 12 months, and it was October last year. He wrote an open letter, and just to be clear, this guy's department is the highest funded research specifically for fire ant. They got continuously funded the highest amount in the world for specific research on fire ants. And he made an open statement saying that due to the distribution size and the duration of fire ant infestations in Queensland, he says it's not anecdotal. It's not feasible. He says this is not an anecdotal thing. It's been proven time and time again that eradication over them circumstances, which is the duration and the time of that infestation, fire ants are a super pest. And these guys literally wrote the textbook on fire ant, literally, and it's all all the information's in that book. And
thing.
And this is some of the other things when you get the experts saying these things, openly saying that not only is the prophylactic treatment, this eradication program not going to work, but their efforts to do it with spreading these chemicals where there are no fire ants, by killing the native ants that you say will come back, but the fire ants are a super pest. They will infest them areas quicker than the native ants because they are a super pest. And by doing this, he says quite clearly in the open letter that he presents that you're creating an environment that will hasten the spread of fire ants into these areas that don't have fire ants. So whilst there may be some experts out there saying that eradication is still feasible, I haven't seen any evidence of that or any documented of that size and this thing. And like you say, there has been eradicated areas, but the term eradication seems to be pretty willy-nilly, because I think on the Fire Ant Eradication Program site, they actually said in one of their press conferences that they eradicated the fire ants from the Port of Brisbane 4 times. So It doesn't even make sense, some of them things. But I suppose the biggest problem that we have is that they're justifying because most of the fundamental issues that a lot of people are having is the contravening of human rights, private property rights, and individual choice to chemical exposure. And what they're saying is we're justifying removing your human rights and your right to privacy because we believe that we can eradicate fire ants, and by doing it this way, we're going to eradicate fire ants. So people are getting invaded in their private properties. There's women getting breastfeeding babies, having men looking in their windows as they walk in their backyard unannounced, and all these sort of horrible things that you wouldn't think would happen in Australia, based on that concept that the means justifies the ends. But if the end doesn't come, is it justified? Like if we don't get rid of fire ants, is it justified? And then in 10 years' time, when they say, "Oh, sorry, we tried our best, we contravened all your human rights, and we walked all over you guys, killed all your pets, we didn't listen to you, we didn't care about the bees or whatever else," and they didn't eradicate them, then the means doesn't justify the end, does it? And that's, I suppose, that's what people is creating so much angst.
Yeah, I've heard. I do understand that many people are upset about losing their right to what they perceive they can't refuse inspections and the like. Again,
inspections I don't think are a problem. It's the forced treatment that I feel is the problem.
Forced treatment. It's that lesser of evils thing again, isn't it? Like, and again, I think this is a carryover from COVID and vaccinations in some eyes, where the right of free movement was stifled.
It was very stifled on the Gold Coast. It was terrible, wasn't it?
And I feel that some people, this issue has triggered that within them. And again, I just don't think anyone's trying to cause harm. They're trying to reduce harm and mitigate. So that's a whole other path and topic. But I know when the Fire Ants program team have been out to my place and to others, they'll always come and knock on the door first to make an appointment to come back. And if nothing else, those inspections are so valuable to have. They're free. These teams are qualified to know what to look out for, and some trust. Maybe I'm a bit of a sucker, but I do hold some little bit of trust in our government and with authority. And trust me, I've gone through. I'm an old punk. I've had my anti-authoritarian eras.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone have any complaints about inspecting and looking for fire ants. I feel that most of the problem arises when people don't have fire ants. They want to live a lifestyle that's chemical free, but are getting forced to chemically treat their property where there are no identified fire ants. And they say stuff, "Oh yeah, fire ants live underground," or rah, but they're forcing that onto them without any evidence of fire ants. I feel that's the number one problem that people are having, and that's creating stress and anxiety, because then these people, like you say, they're no longer friendly knocking on the door because they're getting a bit of resistance, so they're getting a bit cranky and forceful as well, and this and that, and especially when people have noticed, like you say, anecdotal impacts on their livelihood, their pets, their guinea pigs, or their chickens. I know in their permits now they've changed it from the 1st of July to say that there is residual build-up in chickens. So if there's residual build-up in chickens, then it's fair to say that the poultry, it doesn't matter what sort of bird it is, it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? And it affects the eggs and all that sort of stuff. So having people say that there's no... And again, I feel that your place sort of said that, like, instead of listening to people, we're calling them a liar. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So why would I lie saying that I have had 4 calves negatively impacted by this program that have led to death? What possible motive would I have for lying
No.
about that? It doesn't even make sense either. You know what I mean? So a lot of people are saying that they're having dog problems, and you talk to Dr. Michael O'Donoghue, I think his name is, there on the Gold Coast. He used to work at the Currumbin vet or whatever. He was saying, look, when you do it in a vet, you put one drop on the back of their neck where they can't ingest it, and and it's under supervision. And if they have an adverse reaction, the vet's there to counter any adverse reaction within that. So comparing it to like flea and that treatment, when the vet does it, it's done under supervision. It's an exact dose. And if there is an adverse effects, there's things that can be done. But if there's an adverse effects, there's something that's going on in this program, there's no vet there to fix it. And then people are just losing their animals, you know what I mean? And like you say, if you don't investigate it, or if you do it half-assed, then the people aren't going to get the evidence you want. But if you're not looking for a problem, you're not going to find it. And I feel the program are just looking at number of properties treated, number of tons of chemicals put it out, and they're not looking at, you know, problem that, just like you say, got your blinkers on. You know, that's how I feel is the problem. You know,
and you know, there's nothing's 100%. Everything is up for an adverse reaction, including frontline. That's just a common household. You know, people with pets have used that for decades, and that's why I brought it up, because it's a common household product. But that it's one thing to have suspicions, and coincidences do occur in life, and it just goes back to correlation, causation, which is it, and people flying blind. It leaves people feeling upset, leaves them to think the worst has happened.
And then there's a human aspect of it, creating anxiety and stress over these things, whether it's real or not real. It doesn't really matter. They're having a government violate their private space and killing their animal. They're perceived. That's what's been perceived because of these anecdotal things. Whether it's real or not is really irrelevant. The government's just bulldozing over people without considering these impacts. And I feel that's where the problem lies, where it becomes a them versus us. And there's all these program, we must kill all the fire ants no matter what. And all these people are going, hang on, what about me? You know, what, no matter what, me? Like, am I not a human? And then they're getting, because they're not listening. Like the bees is a very good example. There are situations that can occur that will kill bees. And it's a fact. It can't be disputed that it can happen that way. But then the program and the invasive species councils and the ABC and a lot of people are saying, oh no, they can't kill bees. You know what I mean? But it's not true. There are ways where the bees can be impacted by this program, and that's what we need.
And you know, people like myself, yourself, the beekeepers, our authority is limited on our ability due to costs. Is limited. So you raise a really fair point that it's one thing to ask for the science, it's another to not be able to do it. I'm of the mind that I can't sit on either side. I can't make a judgment with feelings. I have to do it with facts, and it's just how the world is run at the moment. I mean, 2025 is crazy. It seems like every issue is a battle between feelings and facts. And
it's not just this one. I think, like you said, though, I feel that there's, they're talking about, I haven't been impacted, but net zero is impacting some farming land with transmission lines and with, batteries and turbines or whatever. And if forced entry, and they have to give access to these people to do these lines and this and that sort of stuff. So there's them sort of things. So the private property rights have been impacted by a lot of programs. And in Queensland, I don't know if you know, there's also the yellow crazy ants, the electric ants. So there's not just the fire ant program. It seems to be quite targeted. But one of the biggest problems that we're facing, I suppose, is the inconsistencies. I think you mentioned it before, inconsistencies of things within the program. And one of the biggest things is we've seen first-hand evidence that the fire ants have been moved to 5 locations, I think mining sites in central Queensland, I think inland between Rockhampton and Mackay or whatever, up there. And they got at them sites with bricks, I feel, bricks or pellets and bricks or something like that.
Right.
And that was proven, but there's no restrictions or movements or no high risk associated with bricks. So people can freely move bricks wherever they want. But yet, hay,
on tires, they travel on
yeah. But
hijack,
professionally baled hay that has zero impacts of spread in the 25 years or 24 years that they've been doing it, where these ants are here. They haven't spread anything. It's their livelihood, their reputation, and to incentivize not sending fire ants in their products, because it's their life. But they're putting restrictions and financial burden on these people. But like you say, vectors could be anything. But everything else is getting out and not impacting people's lives. But the hay farmers, have been heavily impacted both for financial burden, both for bureaucracy with procedural requirements, and penalised with the New South Wales border closure as well, and restrictions in trade. Yet the bricks that have known to move fire ants are still free to do that. There's no restrictions there. So it's the same with the Brisbane Wharf. The Brisbane Wharf has had fire ants move from the Brisbane Wharf in the containers over to the Perth Wharf, and I think twice they've had to eradicate fire ants over in Perth from an infestation from a container from Brisbane. But yet the wharf is still freely trading. They can do whatever the hell they want, and yet the hay farmers that haven't had a single incursion of fire ants in their products are restricted, not just with financial burden in bureaucracy and procedural stuff, but also in trade restrictions. It's very inconsistent.
You're right. It's inconsistent, and that's bureaucracy as we know it on any issue. It blows common sense out of the water sometimes. In public policy, when policymakers are making decisions on behalf of the public and creating policy, they view things through the lens of the greater good. And the best outcome for the greater good, or that's what they're supposed to do. But sometimes the left hand isn't talking to the right hand, and what could be policy in one bureaucratic department doesn't marry up in another, and that's a lot. That is a failing overall in the public service and in government, and it's constantly evolving that way, particularly when parties switch over on state and federal levels. There's a bit of a lag to get those consistencies or update the policies or review them. Speaking of policy review, did you have a chance to, because I haven't looked in depth at the actual submissions, all of the submissions made for 2024 fire ant review that the federal government did. Were you someone that lodged a submission for that?
No, I didn't lodge anything. We done some concerns as a group to the PFAS inquiry because the injection, especially in heavy infested areas where they're doing direct injection in fipronil and that, because that's a known PFAS chemical, carcinogenic in humans. And when you have these large infestations, that's a lot of repeated excessive doses of these PFAS chemicals. And I think it's the Blue Mountains, they've got PFAS levels in their drinking water that's exceeding safe limits at the moment that they're dealing with. So I feel that was an important issue. But they are doing a review now, and they're supposed to be announcing how they're going, because at the start of the 2023 to 2027 fire ant eradication program strategy, they got 50% of their funding up front, and they got to pass a gate to get the next 50% of their funding. So they're going to make an announcement on that. I think they said in December. So they're sort of doing an evaluation now, I think. Like
a progress check kind of thing. Okay. And can I ask you a couple of questions? Are we you know, we good to
No, I just say, I mean, we've been chatting away for about an hour, but that's okay. It's all right.
Oh my God, I can talk in concrete underwater, mate. You don't know what you got yourself in for. Hope you got your lunch made ready. 2 hours later. So tell me a bit about your experience as an everyday layman kind of thing. How I believe that you had some calves that were lost on your property. Could you talk me through what happened and what led you to really get interested and research more about this? So I know that your listeners might be well aware of it, but you know.
No, it's an interesting story, because what people don't realise is that people might have just been started to be exposed to it in this 2023-2027 program. And what they talk about there is having 2 years of treatments, three treatments a year for 2 years, and then they're supposed to be moving the borders in. But in an area where I am, we've been exposed to this procedure and these chemicals since 2019. So up the road here is a university, the Gatton campus of University of Southern Queensland, I think it is, and there's Gatton campus there. But they had, several fire ants around their facilities up there. And at the start, before this current banned horseshoe-shaped thing that they call it, started off like a horseshoe, but now it's like, a scorpion or something shaped thing. It's got all bubbles everywhere in it. But it was a 5 kilometre radius from an owl nest. So we got caught up in one of them radiuses back in 2019. And this is even before COVID. So we didn't even know about fire ants. We didn't even care, really. It wasn't even a problem. And but at the time, they were very ruthless for months and months and months, with their helicopters flying around and dropping it, baits everywhere, all over the place, relentlessly. We only got small acreage, and they were putting it in our dams and putting it on our roof of our house, and we had to tank water. But we didn't really know anything about the chemicals, or we were just getting annoyed by the sound of the helicopter buzzing around, annoying us all the time. But also, I had a horse get spooked, run through a barbed wire fence and got injured, and I had a cow got spooked by the low-flying helicopter, run through the barbed wire fence, because we got shit fences here. We just got the barbed wire, bloody, standard fences, and caused injury there. So I got very cranky about that low flying, and that's when I sort of, I didn't even look at the chemicals. I was just very upset about the disturbance, because I was doing my counselling thing then, and similar to these talks, and you're trying to do your assignments or whatever when you're doing these things, and literally it's just like a helicopter echoing in the background, for months at a time. I think I got about 10 or so of my counselling sessions on there that recorded for the just the helicopter, just like drive you insane. But the fact that it was causing injury to my cattle from them getting spooked out too was creating an issue. So I don't remember really whether I was yelling on the phone or whether I run up the front and yelled and abused someone there or whatever. But when my animals got injured, I feel it might have been on the phone, actually, because I remember they used to put notices in your letterbox, and it's not addressed to us, it's just junk mail. We didn't even care, just threw it in the bin. But I remember going through the bin at one stage and trying to, I've seen something about that, and so it might have been on the phone. But anyway, they says okay, then we can stop the aerial baiting above your property and stressing out your animals. But next time they come with quad bikes, they were like a 4-wheel all-terrain vehicle or whatever they call it, and had a spray bar at the back of it. And this was very drought area. So there was no water in our dam at all. But a couple of times I was home, because I'm off doing my own thing, doing whatever I do, and just letting them do whatever they do, thinking that's what they have to do. A bit like what you said, the government, they must be doing what they need to do, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. Why would they be doing something they don't need to do? And you just let them on, and it was no problem. But I come home a couple of times, and they were being like hoons or whatever, and they're actually like treating my dry dam as like a skate bowl or something, like doing tricks and shit on their thing, and all the spray bar. And I did ask them, because they're putting poison everywhere, the baits everywhere. And I thought, well, is this stuff, so what is it? Oh no, it's so, don't worry about it, it's okay. There's this attitude that it's okay, they can do whatever they want, but it's still got to be treated with respect. So I feel the messaging that they're giving these people that are distributing them is wrong, because you still have to treat it. But I didn't realise, it didn't click to me at this stage. But when we bought our cattle, we done a lot of research into the cattle that we bought, and we selected certain lines that our cattle are fully registered cattle. So we specifically checked them for any problems, and we bought them specifically based on the fact that we don't have any problems, and we hadn't had any problems at all. And then on 30th of November 2023, that's about 4 years of this reckless poisoning going on without any regard. We euthanized our first calf. Our first calf was euthanized. It had a decline over a 6-week period. And we took it to the vet, and it was late at night on the weekend or some bloody thing, I forget now. But it was the vet freezer was full, and we couldn't keep it, so we had to bring it back. But we tested for snake bites and anything that was usual. And we talked about, I must have have something wrong with its liver or something like that, or some toxin or something. But we didn't really put it one on one together yet, so we just brought it back and buried that. And then less than 6 months later, the next calf was born, and it had sort of like a deformities, like in its foot, and we just thought it might have been just tight tendons. We'd never seen that before either. So we just treated it for tight tendons, thinking, oh yeah, sometimes they can get a bit too big for their for their mum or whatever, and they're a bit squashed up in there and whatever, and you can just treat it for that. And there's an antibiotic that you can get that can loosen up their tendons and do that. So but then when it had the same 6-week decline from birth to we had to euthanize about 6 weeks old again, so it had the same cognitive decline. So this time we were able to plan the euthanization of it to be able to take it to the USQ for the necropsy report. So we did that, and we took it down there, and within about 2 weeks we started getting some stuff back from the vet saying, oh yeah, because it takes about a month or so to get the results, but we started getting some preliminary stuff back saying, oh yeah, toxic liver poisoning. And I thought, and then I started Googling it, and that's when I started getting researches. And then when I realised there was something really wrong with the program, I emailed the program and I said, look, I've had 2 calves die now. We're getting that necropsy done. They're suspecting that there's toxic liver poisoning. I've got some concerns here. And then they didn't respond. They ghosted me for like 2 months, prior to that, after that. So and then the more and more I looked into it, a lot of people in this area were talking about how they've lost fertility rates. So generally one of the markers in cattle is how many times, the months in between, births. So it takes about, it takes 10 months or whatever to have a baby, and normally they'd come in heat 3 months, after they're born. So, if you're getting a calf every 13 months, that's pretty, standard or whatever. And that they can rate their calves their cow's performance based on that. If you're getting a calf every 13 months, or if you're getting one every 15 months, she's not quite performing properly, or the bull mightn't be performing properly. But fertility of your animals is calculated based on the frequency of your calving rates, and people were noticing, and that's something that farmers monitor. That's something that we monitor. Everyone monitors that sort of stuff, the dates, we put it in your diary and all that sort of stuff, and and we monitor all this stuff. And when you start noticing the fertility rates are declining, then there's problems in that as well. But so people were saying that, and then they started attributing that to the fire ant, and that's when I started looking into it from there. So that's what started my journey. Okay. How that happened.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. It's, gosh, you're really living on the land out there, aren't you? And that must have been a really stressful period. Not only having the choppers flying around, but just no answers and strange things. We all love our animals, our livestock. And that's interesting. I mean, I'm sure there's a few stepping stones too between that point and then sort of publicly. Would you say that you're campaigning? Is that the right word?
Oh, I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say this is a strong campaign. Yeah. I'd say certainly is. But what happened on my place on April 16th here, where they forced entry, the police ripped my gate open, causing injury to my hand. I got 5 stitches in my hand from that happening.
Right.
And then they literally tackled me in my backyard and put handcuffs on me and dragged me at the front. And then the ambulance was waiting at the front to take me to the hospital from the big gash that they put in my hand. So that happened on April 16th.
Police there? Sorry,
yeah, well, there was 6 police here, and I think there was about 8 biosecurity officers on a property that doesn't have fire ants. So the interesting thing, I made it very public. But that has happened to over 2,000 people prior to that. But people get embarrassed and people get, but in the Senate inquiry that happened in early 2024, I think it was Matt Canavan was talking to someone about it, and she says 1,442 people required police intervention to forcefully treat their property on different properties. And she said from the numbers were a bit old, and she was talking about that number was from August 2023 for the 12-month prior to that or something. She says,
so there'd be more.
So there's a lot more since then. So, and I know when I talk to my neighbour. So I've got a nursery here and next door, and it's a 10-acre nursery, and I've spoken to him. And I thought he was exaggerating, because no one really believes that the government's going to go to these extreme measures, especially when there's no biosecurity risk. There's no fire ants here, you know what I mean? But they're forcing the nurseries to put the bifenthrin or whatever through the potting mix and this and that as well. And he was telling me stories about how they come here with grinders and they cut his gate open and they use bolt cutters, and he said he got heaps of people. He's like an 80-year-old man, you know, and you just think he's exaggerating. You think, oh, yeah, stupid sovereign citizen or whatever. You're just exaggerating on your anti-government, and the government's not going to do that. And the regular people are sort of got that sort of mortality. Oh, you must have deserved that, you know, because they try to dehumanise us. They try to, like the ABC, for example, done a hit piece on me calling me a conspiracy theorist. I got contracts with 2 major universities doing research on fire ant treatment alternatives to try and create better outcomes for the communities that don't want the chemical treatment. And that's how I get treated, you know what I mean? And I'm very lucky. I know who I am, so I don't really care. But before I got involved in all this, and before I realised all this sort of stuff was going on, when this guy's telling me, oh yeah, the police are going to come and they can tackle me to the ground and they're going to force me to do this, and you think, it's silly old bastard, that's not going to happen, you know? And that's why I made it so public, because it had happened to heaps of people. I got lots of phones of women ringing up screaming and getting really distraught about this stuff happening to them, and they're just walking over them. But because people have jobs, people have, you know, they don't want to be known as a conspiracy theorist, or they don't want to be, associated with any negative publicity. So no one knows that that's what's been happening. Right. So I feel part of the campaign I was doing is just to try to shine a light on what's happening, because at the moment, behind closed doors, they can just keep doing what they're doing. But people's human rights, fundamental, property rights, and individual choice of toxic chemical exposure should be respected. There are ways out there that we can manage properties that don't want to be exposed to these chemicals. It's just that they're ignoring it, and that's what I suppose you're right. I am campaigning heavily and doing whatever I can to try to have initiate change that can create an environment where we can still manage fire ants, but also respect people's rights. Yeah, I mean, I feel it doesn't have to be one or the other. I feel we can manage fire ants and respect people's rights, and I suppose that's what I stand for. Yeah.
Oh, and you mentioned, that was another question I had, was the steam treatment. What is it a hot water system? What's the technical name for alternative you've been investigating?
So we passionately call it FASO, fire ant soup operations, is what we've been calling it. So it's a patented US technology from the University of Central Florida, and it's actually licensed through that, and that's the commercial arrangement that I have got with that university. So it's a low flow, low pressure, hot water. So it's not steam. So this is where I suppose there's a lot of misconception about it. So the fire ant treatment is not steam. Steam has been tested and it hasn't been found effective. And some people, when they compare what we're doing with other hot water treatments or steam treatments, they're different. Not every hot water treatment or every fire ant treatment using steam or whatever is the same. There's different processes. So we are literally doing a direct nest treatment with the lance, prong that we're utilizing. So what we're trying to do. So generally what happens is with the fire ants, it's like a carrot in the ground. And they're a thermal regulated insect, and they want to maintain their temperature at about 30 degrees, anywhere from 24 to 35 degrees. So they're constantly moving their brood and the queen up and down the channels in their nest. And there's about 10% of the population of the colony is managing that process, that thermal regulation process, and that's why it's impossible for fire ants to establish successful colonies in these heavily treed areas, which is ironically where a lot of these helicopters are dropping their chemicals. So not only are there's no fire ants there, but it's actually physically impossible for fire ants to establish successful colonies there. But this hot water treatment is targeting actual nests. So you're using their own channels against them with the low flow hot water, and it's flowing through their own channels and things to flood their nest, and then you can put your prong into the nest and really in an ideal situation you want to see the backflow of the water, but we do have different soil types where the drainage soil, it doesn't have, so you got to just try and put it in there. So basically, so that's basically what it is. It's just a hot flow, so it's a continuous supply of hot water. It's built on demand, so that there's no storage of hot water.
That's what I was going to ask next. Like the first of all, the effectiveness, because this is all new to me, this treatment. So, because you're well researched and I can take your word for it, what is the effectiveness rate of this? What are studies showing about the effectiveness as far as, does it get the queen every time? Is it 100%? Is it 75? Is it 50?
Yeah, so we can talk about that a little bit. So there is a lot of research done by Dr. King's team, obviously, in the States. So the only verifiable research that's been done here in Australia is a small pilot program by Southern Cross University. So they had a small budget to get going on this alternative technologies, and they engaged me to, because I'm the only licensee of this machine. So the interesting thing about this machine, it's not a standard application, so it's not an off-the-shelf product. Even though I bought an off-the-shelf product, I had to fit it out because ultimately a high-temperature, low-flow machine is not a normal application. Normally that would be high-temperature, high-pressure, vehicle wash or fire and security watch and that sort of stuff. So we've had to modify that machine to suit our application. So that's very important for people to understand as well. So it's not a very common application. You got to actually make a machine to be able to do this sort of work. So
it's quite specific. You'd have to you can't just drag a machine from site to site. Do you have to make individual machines that are site specific, or?
Well, at the moment I've got it on the back of a trailer that I tow to site that I can do it, and I've got 100 meters. Actually, I've got a world first. It's a dual lance application. So I can actually have two operators operating off this one machine independently, and each operator has 100 meters of hose that they can operate in around the trailer. So to get operational effectiveness. But what happens is, I suppose, is the first thing to acknowledge is it's a direct nest treatment. So you got to find a fire ant nest to treat, and that's what we're trying to do. So the pilot study in Australia, we done one at Stockley, a site at Stockley, a site at Jimboomba, and a site at Hagesley. So that's three areas that we worked on. The original site at Stockley, we treated 37 nests on the first day of treatment. So literally we just identified it and we labelled and tagged whatever 37 nests that we found, and we treated them with the hot water system. And then we come back 3 weeks later and we counted how many of them, because I left the tags in there, and of them, 33 of the 37 nests didn't have any fire ant activities.
Oh, wonderful.
So that worked out about 89% from one treatment. And the other ones, interestingly, that did have, it still reduced the fire ant nest by 90 to 95%. So it was only like a little patch of fire ant activity on it. So we treat it with a second treatment. And the interesting thing when you do this is when you go back in 3 to 4 weeks' time, there's other nests that have just popped up that you can identify, in other areas as well, and you can treat them as well.
Because the queen is the problem. If there's any disturbance to the nest, and if that queen goes, I'm out of here, she can fly some distance and start again. So
and it's interesting. So they are a super pest. So they do take flight on average 13 times a year, right? So between 4 times a year and 24 times a year, depending on the nest. So generally, she'll only fly within 400 meters of her nest. That's 90% of the time, she'll only be 400 meters away. But they do say in the textbook, sometimes we can say up to 1.6 kilometers over land is what they're witnessing. So, but because they are a super pest, they can establish, and it doesn't matter whether you're using chemicals or whether you're using hot water treatment. It doesn't matter. This is true for any of them. So if there's a queen that's being killed, they will adopt another queen. So when you're talking about 13 times on average a year, that's once every lunar cycle they're taking flight. So every time a nest isn't treated in a lunar cycle, hundreds, if not thousands, of new sexuals are being released into the atmosphere every time. That's why we're sort of really advocating for direct nest treatment. Like, we want to get rid of these direct nest treatment, so to stop that. But what happens is, whether you're doing the hot water system or not, you're treating that 10%, aren't you? You're killing the queen, you're killing the brood, and you're killing them 10% of workers that are in that colony at that time when you do that treatment. And when you're doing the chemical treatment, it's the same sort of thing. You're just killing that queen or whatever is what you're trying to do. But there's still ants. 90% of them are out doing ant business, aren't they? Out in the environment.
Ant business.
Yeah, they're out doing it. And they'll come back to the nest that's been flooded or she's gone or whatever, and they'll start rebuilding it or whatever, rebuilding the nest or whatever ants do instinctively. But without a queen and without a brood, they have no purpose and they'll die. Right? That's typically what will happen. So in a heavily infested area, that's probably a very likely scenario. But in a heavily infested area, it's quite possible that there's some queens out there that haven't got the body fat to establish their first colony. So what happens is, peak season for fire ants is late spring, early summer. Everyone knows that. They sort of take flight. But there's ants taking flight maybe in the middle of winter or something. So they haven't had the body fat buildup or the conditioning that's required to start a successful colony. Because when they land, they'll dig a hole down into a chamber up, and they'll seal off that chamber for up to a month before they while they make their first bunch of workers. And they call them minions, actually special workers. They're like half size of a normal worker once they get going. But for that month, she's living off her, and her minions are living off her body fat for that duration to do that. So if the queen A flies too far, then she's going to lose her body fat because she flew too far, and she won't be able to successful colony anyway. But if she flies through off peak seasons, she hasn't got the body fat to be able to do that. So there's lots of queens out there just waiting for the opportunity. And if there's a heap of nests and they're building it, and just before they die with lack of purpose, this queen walks in there and says, "Hey guys, I'm a queen. I'm ready to go." And they say, "Oh yeah, we need a queen," and they'll adopt her. You know what I mean? So they are a super pest in the fact that they have got multiple ways of establishing colonies, and that's true. But so anyway, so with that Gimboomba one, we treated the 4 nests, and it wasn't 100% of the nest didn't fail. You've wiped out 90 to 95% of them anyway. You know what I mean, on them 4 nests. But anyway, we come back after another 3 to 4 weeks, and it was 100%. So on that site with 2 treatments, the first treatment was 89%, and 2 treatments was 100% successful. And because we've done the inspections, because it takes about a month before you can see them. But if you have a surveillance sort of program, you can pick them up pretty early because they're not going to have their sexuals ready for probably 6 months or something anyway. So, and you can sort of find, if you're trained eye, you can sort of pick up a fire ant's nest, with about 1,000 ants. You could sort of start to see signs of it pretty easily with the trained eye. Yeah. So with the surveillance sort of program, you can pick them up early before they have sexuals taken flight, and you can destroy them. And but yeah, so with the 2 visits and the 2 treatments, we were able to clear the original nest plus whatever popped up, in between that 6 to 8 week period anyway.
Fantastic. And sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. And the other site, that was on natural ground. The other site was in garden bed. So Jimboomba, we did 12 nests, and the first one we only got 7 out of the 12 nests successful on the first treatment. But it had a different environment where they were raised garden beds. So the nests were probably, and these are learning things that we do. We've got to pick up on these learning things. So obviously, we need to adapt on that. But even with the second treatment, we got 11 out of 12 successfully treated with two nests. So the first time 7 out of 12, and then with the second treatment 11 out of 12. And the third site at Haigs Lee, we done 80 nests. 80 nests in a small corner of thousands of fire ants on this property. There's like literally, so we've done a small corner of 80 that we reached within a day. And we come back 3 weeks later, and of them, I think it was the number, it's published on the Southern Cross University press release stuff, but I think it was about 33 or something. It's quite a small percentage. But with the second treatment, we didn't have enough money to assess it, the research the second time, so we only done that one treatment. But we treated it the second time, and I'd gone out to that farm not long ago actually, and I talked to him about it, and he said they were all successfully, even months later, they still hadn't come back to that site. So hot water treatment with adequate surveillance program creates an environment that will eradicate fire ants. It's that's how it works. Yeah.
Thanks so much for spelling that all out so clearly. And that segues beautifully into the next question I had for you, and I won't hold you up too much longer.
No, that's right.
I'm glad to see, earlier in this chat we touched upon needing resources. Government and academics tend to have them.
Yep.
Everyday people don't. I'm really pleased to see that you've got some backing from Southern Cross University. That's fantastic. How's the public support been, and have you got much public support? Has this rounded or generated much interest out there?
It's very much as you know, I don't know whether you do know or not, but just mentioning the genetic modified products in the corn grit in the soya oil are not compatible with organic farm management. It actually contravenes AS 6000s, and I think they have actually suspended treatment on them properties at the moment. So despite forcing it onto people, physically forcing it onto people, organic farms, for a number of years, they've now come back and say it's contravenes the standards. So that's another issue altogether. But obviously these people want to manage their properties in a chemical-free way, and this is certainly a way we can do it with the right surveillance and the right frequency of treatment. We can use science to create better outcomes on these properties with no need for chemicals. We don't have to force chemicals. So if people don't want to have exposure to chemicals through lifetime choices or through organic, produce factors, or different reasons, and despite what people say, there are people that I know of, I've seen the medical certificates, and I've seen the evidence that suggests that people are having adverse effects to these chemicals, both with skin sensitivities, rashes, respiratory problems, and these other adverse effects are happening to humans that are being ignored now. So people that are having adverse effects either with their animals or with their pets or with their livestock or with even their children or with their family members can be empowered to have alternatives should they choose to. And it's just a matter of getting a right surveillance mechanism in place, and subsidies to help pay for the water treatment. But people are paying independently anyway of it. But the problem is, even if they pay me to do that as a commercial operation, they're still using police to force entry on the chemicals on there anyway when it's not required. So that's why I think that competitive commercial operations create fit for purpose, cost effective, and customer focused solutions that government bureaucracy departments can't see because they haven't got their things on. But it's in my best interest to look after my clients, whereas the government departments, they don't care. They can just do what they want because they're the government. You don't have to have repeat business. They just say, well, we're just going to come and barge over you, and they call you a client anyway. So I feel that there can only be positive impacts by creating alternative solutions to the chemical and empowering people to live their best life. I feel that's what it's about, and then that way we're stopping this friction because that's all people want. People don't. No one wants to have fire ants, you know what I mean? But whether the eradication is possible or impossible, time will tell. Time will tell that. But we don't have to violate people's human rights, private property rights, and individual choice if we can establish alternative treatments. And I feel it is possible to do that. And if people are happy to pay for it out of their own pocket, they should be able to be empowered to do that. But more importantly, I feel it should be fair that whatever money has been given, because they spend about $1,200 a day on the drones or whatever, the labour and all these other things. So there should be some, even though there should be some sort of subsidies to help them empower it to manage the property the way they want. But at the moment, it doesn't even matter even if they 100% fund it themselves, they're still getting the chemicals forced upon them, which is, to me, wrong. You know what I mean? So that's what we're trying to do.
Seem to be a discrepancy. And, I feel like we've come to a beautiful full circle, even though, we could have kept talking. The devil's in the details, right? With these, why there's so much conflict and inconsistency. We're still very much in the R&D stage, even though we do have a eradication program.
And that's what people are feeling like. We're in this. They're feeling like the lab rats because literally, like you said, and I think them words are very important, like a R&D stage on everything, and people are feeling like it's a big experiment because there's never been a successful eradication program done like this ever before, and the fact that they're not even working with the communities and having and working with alternative solutions and it's just mind-boggling. I mean, like, and this is where all these conspiracy theories and all these other things come in, because people can't understand that. Why wouldn't the government allow a non-chemical approach and support people that don't want to be exposed, whether it be organic farmers or sensitivities or whatever? It doesn't make any sense. So I suppose. And it's really hard if they're not listening. So to enable people to be heard, they have to be more vocal and have to get out there and create controversies, because otherwise they're not being heard. They'll just be forgotten about. So it's a real conundrum, isn't it? So.
Sorry, my husband's just come home in the background talking on his phone. It is controversial, and at a public level, as the whole reason that you and I even have had the opportunity to get to chat today and came across each other's paths is because of that very contentious post that I wrote that raised the heckles. And I've been aware of the toxic fire ant program page. This is the first time I've personally posted on my community page about it, because of the ire, that the heat in the debate. Just who needs that in their lives, really? Like you say, the people.
And that's why I really appreciate you taking the time and talking about it, because we've got a pile of views, I suppose, in what we're trying to. But when you nut it down and talk it in a reasonable way, no one's been unreasonable, and no one's trying to. I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of it. But when you get, like you say, the controversy and the heat of the moment and all this stuff, it becomes very argumentative. But if you break it down and just talk to people, I think that there's common ground. You know, I mean, no one wants fire ants. You know, everyone wants to manage fire ants, and whether they're eradicatable or not eradicatable, regardless, you know, we can manage them. We can agree that we got to manage them, and you know, and I think as a community, it doesn't matter. We all are part of the community. You know, we all are, and having that connection and respecting different people's views, I feel is important. You know, and there's no one, like you say, there's no one out to try and. Like, I don't feel it. Like, why would someone lie about having adverse effects? Obviously, they feel passionately about that, and they're not being heard. And that's why they have to resort to these posts on social media, because the governments aren't hearing these things. So I feel it's a great credit to you for standing up and having a chat to me today. Like, you know, I'm not that monster that people make out I am. I'm quite reasonable. And I really do thank you for your time today.
No, you too. And I think that hopefully that this conversation, and for those that watch it, whether they're, you know, especially if they're very passionate and emotive about this debate, I hope that both of us have demonstrated or modelled how productive conversation can go, that it doesn't need to sink to ad hominem. It doesn't need, we don't need doxing, we don't need personal attacks, we don't, all of this stuff that goes on, not just in this issue, but in the broader political sphere. I really appreciate you taking the time, reaching out to ask me for a chat, and being, you know, really personable, and sharing your experience in a very reasonable, logical, calm manner.
With dignity and grace, I feel that's the best way to do it. With dignity and grace, regardless what all the white noise around you know, all the stuff that goes on in the background. If we can just have these real conversations and just respect everyone's point of view and perspective, and like you say, then I feel as a community we don't have to be divided. We can be united, and I feel that's where we've got to be. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And just on this last point, you raised something. We are all part of the community as individuals, and you know, I am studying public policy and economics. My first job was in a fruit shop. My first real grown-up job was when I was living in Canberra. I joined the public service, like 90% of Canberrans do. And you have an induction, you know, into the public service. You'll have to sit this course or two and do some training. And the thing I took away from that, and it stuck with me for life, is government isn't an other. The government is made of us. Even if we aren't public servants ourselves, we vote for the ministers or the parties that place the ministers. We have rights to communicate with the government through, you know, a lot of us do, through lobbying, submissions, general emails, picking up the phone. The government, we are the government in a really indirect way. So we need to, my advice for people out there that still hold some distrust, and we all do, like, you know, over one subject or another, we get a little bit peeved off with government agencies from time to time. We just need to keep in mind that othering and otherizing gets no one anywhere, and that we as citizens have a right to contact government departments, to lodge submissions, to appeal. Now, whether we are listened to or not is a different thing.
That's right. But
we should all just hold on to hope of that there isn't this giant conspiracy to strip us of our human rights in general, even though it feels like that when they're mangling your hand and pushing through your gate and putting handcuffs on you. By the way, as an aside, I meant to ask, did they actually lay charges for that?
So I'm still going. So I've been to court now about 6 or 7 times now. So it's just an ongoing process. So I was charged with obstructing police, not even under the Civil Biosecurity Act, but under the Criminal Act, which is quite interesting as well. And that's happened to several other people as well. So all these adverse effects are happening. So that's $10,000 so far I spent out of my own money to my defence, which could have been spent elsewhere in the community, creating better outcomes. But so there's all these things, and I am a small business owner. I am a small, rural farmer, and these are in the values of the Liberal National Party, that they support small business, they support farmers, they support entrepreneurs, and are supposed to have less government. And here's the government doing this to me, and it just feels like I tick all the boxes of people that they should be looking after, but I'm getting treated poorly. And I'm just one example of thousands of people, and it's only because I've chose to be vulnerable and making my story public to try and help these other people that are having these same things, because a lot of these other people have jobs and families and things that haven't got the support or haven't got the ability to go public with some of these things because of the adverse effects that it does have. Because people taking time off work to go to court all the time is probably going to get them sacked, isn't it, under normal circumstances? So people can't do that. So I feel that I'm a little bit of a shade party on that regards, but I feel that I have to make it public just so people can be aware. So,
understandable. Again, really appreciate that. Look at that. You may as well crack lunch open now. We've been 1.25 hours. So
no worries. And thank you very much. And we'll touch base another time. Thank you very much. Have a good one. See you.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate it. Bye.